Optimized my bottlenecks, removed redundant pointer checks. The database's subselects are indexed to a T. They shaved the microseconds down till there was nothing left to count. I instantaneously found the answer in a breeze. But I've been feeling so alone. Nobody here is calling from a function or a phone. If I'm dead code, let me die.
It's the Monday Morning Show. Today is January 19th, 2015. I'm Ken LaSalle. That's Josh Woodward singing Dead Code. You can find out more about Josh at joshwoodward.com. You can find out more about me at kenlasalle.com. Thanks to a free weekend from Showtime recently, I caught this really interesting documentary on the band Genesis, which got me thinking about the first time I listened to Genesis, which was also the first time I smoked pot. But I'll get to that later. First, let's talk about the news. After the horrible killing of journalists and cartoonists at the French newspaper Charlie Hebdo, which I know I'm probably terribly mispronouncing, but hey, there was this terrific outcry in favor of free speech. After all, if we aren't allowed to speak freely, what freedoms do we have really? Consider that for just a minute, because it took just a minute for the world to go from "Viva la free speech" to, hey, watch what you say there. Everyone from the Pope to Fox News, okay, that's not much of a spectrum, I'll grant you, but plenty of people spoke up in favor of people not speaking up, which is pretty damned irritating, to tell you the truth. This message against messages focused itself down to one single point, which seemed to be that nobody has the right to offend others, especially when it comes to religion. If you asked the Pope last week, and this is Mr. Nice Guy Pope here, anyone who offends his religion deserves a punch in the nose. It's nice to see the Catholics stay true to their roots. Why do people take issue when you try to talk about religion critically? Is it because religion is a strongly held belief? Perhaps, but I remember people having strongly held beliefs about leaded fuel, but they all switched over. No, it's not just that it's a strongly held belief, but rather that we seem to be under the impression that there's something special about strongly held beliefs. You ever ask a sworn carnivore to try going vegan? He'll tear your liver out, and then eat it. How about one of those anti-vaccine nuts? Ever try talking sense to them? Or a gun nut? Or a climate change denier? Just because you hold a belief strongly does not make that belief any less fallible. In our race to teach less critical thinking, we've forgotten that the only way to understand the world around us is to approach it with a critical eye. Religion, especially monotheism, is nutso thinking. Meat eaters should push aside their meat and eat their vegetables. Vaccines are not poison. Guns do kill. And climate change is real. By the way, 2014, hottest year on record, climate change deniers, you dopes. You can tell those of us who speak out that you'll kill us all you want, but if you believe that's going to shut us up, you clearly haven't run the numbers. The stupid may outnumber the smart, but education is infectious, and we'll take down as many of you as we can with critical thought, even if it means you'll try to take us down with critical bullets. Now, I know most people aren't brandishing guns. They're going online and posting, well, I read this just this past week. It read, "We can debate anything you like, but don't try being critical." Imagine debating someone like that. Anyway, that's about all I can say about that, because the whole thing makes me sick. Let's talk about music. As I mentioned, I caught this great documentary about Genesis, a band that has been quiet now for nearly a decade. And it got me thinking about my own experience with music, and how I've changed over the years. I remembered being a pretty big fan of Genesis back in the day, and that got me thinking about all the bands I was so fervent about when I was younger. I'm not so fervent about any band these days. My taste in music has become pretty ill-defined of late. And I have a theory about why this could be. Imagine that, I have a theory. But you see, I remember being 18 years old and being completely dedicated to Genesis and Pink Floyd, the Moody Blues and Bruce Springsteen, and on and on. I would buy every album, listen to it dozens of times on repeat, squeeze every bit of musical goodness I could out of every tune, and then move on to the next band I was crazy about. Nowadays, I'll pick up this album or that, but mostly I'll just buy a track or two and not even get the album. Why is that? Because I think it's just easier to feel totally devoted to an artist, be it a band, an author, a filmmaker, or whatever, when you're still young, still looking for meaning, still impressionable. As I approach my 50th birthday, I find myself less entranced by new bands, but I also find myself less likely to hate new bands. Everything is kind of a wash. When I was young, there were only a few bands that fit under the category, I don't like them, but I don't hate them. Bands or artists I could listen to, but wouldn't actually support. Bands such as The Smiths and Talking Heads, and even Led Zeppelin. I liked them fine, but I couldn't see myself buying their albums. Now, everything is like that. Best example, the Foo Fighters. Good band, great tunes, but there's just something, I don't know, we just don't connect. Nothing wrong with them. Put them on the radio, and I'm there. When I was 17, things were quite different. The first time I listened to Genesis, and I mean really listened, I'm not talking about having them on the radio in the background. The first time I listened to Genesis was also the first time I smoked pot. I remember it was late one evening after a play rehearsal. I was a theater geek back then. I was sure I'd end up becoming an actor, or at least I hoped. After rehearsal, I was hanging out with this other kid whose name may have been Chip Weidenkeller, though I'm probably getting that wrong. We walked down to his house, and he brought out a tape of Genesis 3 Sides Live. The best stereo was in his brother's truck, so we both kicked back in the truck, and he put the music on. He pulled out this beat-up old joint. Now, I knew what it was immediately. After all, I was 17. Though I'd never smoked any yet, I knew it was something I was going to try, and heck, there was no time like the present. The grass was good, and we filled the cab with smoke, and Genesis, a band I would never categorize as philosophically significant, sang some of the deepest lyrics I had ever heard. Chip and I must have listened to that double album twice in that truck, discussing the meanings of every song as if, there was anything to discuss about the meaning of every song. That's what it's like to be 17. Now, I'll listen to the songs, but I don't know, there's just not a whole lot there. Music is becoming simply music as I get older. The universe loses some of its mystery. Now, if you're young enough, either in body or spirit, that you don't know what I'm talking about, then I say don't worry about it. Enjoy whatever you get from your music, because it should be meaningful. It should blow your mind now and then. I'm looking forward to finding a band that does that just once more before I keel over. This Christmas, I was given an iTunes gift card. Want to know what I got? Here's the list. First, I finally picked up the soundtrack to I Heart Huckabees. Say what you want about the movie, I liked it. And the music from John Bryan, also terribly mispronounced, I'm sure, is just so evocative that I simply adore it. I was also in the mood for some new Pink Floyd, but rather than pick up the new ambient music mess, I decided to pick up something old I never got, which is the album Metal. Metal isn't quite as focused as their later work, but listen to something like Echoes, or Fearless, or One of These Days, and tell me that ain't pretty damn good. I also picked up the new Hoosier album for my wife. She loves Take Me to Church. The album is pretty good, too, very bluesy. And it's only fair I picked that up for her because she picked up the new album from the Congos for me. And then I got some single tracks from Ambrosia and Jefferson Starship, the Guess Who, and the Spinners. I tell you, I'm all over the map. You know, as long as it's old. Ambrosia and Jefferson Starship are right out of my childhood. Nothing is quite so groovy as the Guess Who. And the Spinners, well, they were just what I needed for this soft spot I have for Motown. And there you go. Cool thing for the week? Let's talk batteries. I say let's talk batteries because I'm appalled at what's happening with gas. While we're all so busy slopping up all that cheap gasoline, we seem to have forgotten that we're drawing from a very finite supply. It won't last forever, or even to the end of the century at this rate. But we're just gobbling it up as if global warming weren't a thing. Did I mention, by the way, 2014, hottest year on record? Well, it's nice to see that some people still have their eye on the ball. As the price of solar energy continues to drop, and remember, this is without the harmful effects of fossil fuels making your children's lives hell, we need to look at how we're going to store that energy. Thanks to people like Elon Musk, and is it just me or does his name sound like a cologne, battery technology just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. There may be hope yet. Bloomberg ran a great article about this recently, and you might want to check it out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, or you can Google the title of the article, Get Ready for Life Without Oil. This episode is brought to you by my other podcast, So Dream Something. You can find a new episode coming soon where I will be interviewing actress, director, comedian, and inspiration Alyssa Price. I think it's going to be a great show. I hope you check it out. And that's the Monday Morning Show for January 19th, 2015. Be sure to check back next week for another episode. Head on down to kenlasal.com for all the latest. You can find my ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks all over, etc., etc., etc. You have yourself a terrific week. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. Let's make this world a better place.
I've been feeling so alone. Nobody here has called me from a function or a phone. If I'm dead, code, let me die. 'Cause I'm only wasting memory alive. If I'm dead, code, wipe the drive. 'Cause I'd rather be a memory than a ghost who's still alive.